So yeah, it's this week Parashat Yitro. We finally talked about the main topic of the Parsha, the main topic of the Torah, Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 commandments.
Yeah, the first thing we talked about is that there are 10 commandments. We looked at the first commandment. We didn't see any commandment. We saw a story. I am your God. I took you out of Egypt. And then we go on to the second commandment. So where did that first commandment go?
Exactly. What we tried to understand once and for all, what is this term commandments? Because really, when you pay attention, especially when you pay attention to the Hebrew language, when you learn Torah in Hebrew, you will notice that there is no 10 commandments. This concept is a misconception. You really want to take a look to understand the idea of Aseret HaDibrot better. Hope you enjoy it. So it's this week for Parashat Yitro. I thought finally we'll discuss Aseret HaDibrot, the main topic of this week's Parsha, the main topic of the Torah, the 10 commandments that were given on Har Sinai. Last year we talked about where was Moshe standing during this big event on Har Sinai, during this big occasion on Har Sinai. Was he really on Har Sinai like we always imagine him in all the pictures? Because according to Pshat and the Psukim, that's not where he was. So where was he? That was last year's video. This year, I want to talk about the fact that we have 10 commandments. And this idea of commandments is very interesting because when I open up the 10 commandments and I start reading them, the first pasuk says, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I am your God. And the one big thing that's missing from this pasuk is a commandment. So why are these called the 10 commandments? Why start with that pasuk of Anochi Hashem Elokecha? Where is the commandment in the beginning of the 10 commandments?
Yeah, totally agree. The first commandment is a story. I am your God who took you out of Egypt. And then we go on to the second commandment. But actually, as we always say, we need to read Torah in Hebrew in its original language because it doesn't say anywhere commandment. It's not called the 10 commandments. That's in English. In Hebrew, it's called Aseret HaDibrot, not Aseret HaMitzvot, not Aseret HaChukim, the laws. The 10 Dvarim, we would say maybe the 10 things, but Dvarim is Dibur, is speaking. These are the 10 speakings that Hashem spoke. It's very different than the 10 commandments. We actually know that we see sometimes the term Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor, and we sometimes see the term Vayomer. We also know that we have the Aseret HaDibrot, which is now, but we also have the Asara Ma'amarot, which is Vayomer Hashem Yehi Or. What's the difference between Dibur and Amira? I think it'll help us understand what we're talking about here. The Malbim in Vayikra explains the difference. He says Amira is something that you're saying to someone. You can't talk about Vayomer without saying what you said and who you said it to. But Dibur is something else. Dibur isn't about what you're saying or who you're saying it to. Dibur is about the speak. Human beings are called a medaber. We speak. When I say someone was speaking, I don't necessarily have to say what he was speaking about or who he was speaking to. I'm talking about them. Dibur is focused not on who's receiving it, but on who's speaking it. And we actually see this exactly over here because the opening pasuk to Aseret HaDibrot is Vaydaber Elokim et kol hadvarim ha'ele lemor. We're used to seeing Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. Who's he speaking to? He's speaking. This is what Hashem is speaking about. And if we stop and think about that for a minute, if when Hashem said Yehi Or, that's an Amira, meaning that's something that's focused on that there's a side receiving this, and here the focus is on the one saying it, then what does that actually mean? I think this means that the creation of the world, Hashem said, and it happened. We know that there was a side that was accepting it. There was the light that became light, that shined. There was the darkness. There were the trees. There was the land and the earth and the seas. And this is all of nature. Nature does what Hashem told them to do. Those are amirot. They're said and they're done. Aseret HaDibrot is something else. This is Hashem speaking. Is there another side listening? That's up to us. Hashem is speaking in the world. These things are being said. This is our chance to tune in and listen to that. And if we do tune in, what is the first thing we hear, which is shocking? The first thing we hear is, what is Hashem who created all of the universe? What's he talking about? What's he dealing with? Anochi Hashem Elokecha. He's dealing with you. I am your God. I took you out of Egypt. This is what Hashem is talking about. Not always do I stop and listen and recognize that the creator of the world is dealing with me. This is the first step of everything that comes after that, is listening to the first thing that I hear Hashem speaking about. He's speaking about me. He's speaking about that he is my God, that he's taking me out of Mitzrayim, that he is taking me hand in hand. Everything that comes after that is a result of that. And therefore, based on that, all of Aseret HaDibrot are not mitzvot, are not chukim and mishpatim. We'll get a lot of those later. We have 613 of them before we get those mitzvot. So we don't just treat those mitzvot as a list of rules of how to live in the world, as, a set of laws. And, if you live in a certain country, you should go by those laws. It helps the country actually operate. That's not what Torah is. Torah is Dvar Hashem, is Hashem speaking in the world and me connecting to that. This is true not only about Anochi Hashem Elokecha, it's true about everything that comes after. Lo Yeh and Shabbos and Kibud Avayim. It's not just a rule. This is what Hashem Kivyachol is dealing with. When I connect to that, and this is why we don't only need to do the mitzvot, we also have a mitzvah of learning them. V'dibarta bam, the same term of ledaber. When Hashem is speaking about this, and I'm speaking about this, and I'm listening to this, forget if I do it, I'll do that later. Even before I actually do the mitzvot, when I'm listening to them, it's me connecting, it's me tuning into those words being spoken in the world. Those words that start with Anochi, but continue with all of the different mitzvot, all those commandments, which aren't just rules. It's my opportunity to be a part of what Hashem is dealing with the world. And therefore, when I learn them, when I do them, I'm coming closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm tuning in, I'm davek HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm following his ways, being a part of what he is dealing with in this world.
Very good, very good. Really, I think this term of 10 commandments probably does some incredible misjustice with what the Aseret HaDibrot is, with what Aseret HaDibrot are. Aseret HaDibrot are the words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the speaking of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to the world. And once you call them the 10 commandments, you're kind of putting them in this box of turning them into only commandments, into things that you have to do. You are commanded to do X, and that's it. But really, Aseret HaDibrot and the entire Torah is much more than that. Aseret HaDibrot that Moshe Rabbeinu got on the Luchot, like he says in Sefer Dvarim, that he got on the Luchot in Har Sinai, they are much more than just commandments. The Torah itself is much more than just commandments. Commandments, again, is something, when you're told to do something, you have to do something. There are rules, and some people like to live by rules, others don't like to live by rules, but the Torah is much more than that. The Torah is a way of life, but it's also more than just a way of life. The Torah is the Torah. The Torah is the dibrot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the saying of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And just like you're saying, the dibrot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu came out from Hashem, Vaydaber Elokim. Hashem said all these things in Har Sinai, and they went out onto the world. And once they went out onto the world, it's up to us if we can step up and listen to them. This is also maybe why later on in Parashat Mishpatim we find the very famous phrase of Naaseh v'nishma. And it's always, Higdimu Naaseh l'nishma. They said they were going to do before they hear. But maybe we can say even more than that, that yes, they're going to fulfill the commandments, but it's more than a commandment. They are listening. They are hearing to these statements, to these sayings, to these dibrot. That's what Am Yisrael were mechadesh. Not only that they were going to do before they heard, but also that they were going to listen to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying, and not only do the commandments, not only follow the commandments, but actually also understand that the Torah is much more than that. And again, like you said, and like we keep on saying, you have to listen to the Hebrew language, because obviously this word daber, daled bet reish, has a very famous and familiar other word that we just saw before in Yetziat Mitzrayim, the makah of devil, of plague, of an epidemic. We've been through Corona. Devil is something that spreads out onto the world, and you can't even see it, but it's something that spreads out, and once something has it, they have it. Even if they don't want it, it's there because it was spread out onto the world. The same thing with these dibrot. They exist in the world. This is reality. This is why they start with Anochi Hashem. This is the statement. Hashem is the God of the world, and this is a very big topic, a very, very big sugya of understanding Aseret HaDibrot. There's a big machloket. What exactly are the Aseret HaDibrot? Is Anochi Hashem really one of the 10? There's a big machloket in the Rishonim about this. But the Rambam, for example, does hold that Anochi Hashem is a mitzvah and is one of the 10 dibrot. And the Maharal explains that this Anochi Hashem, first of all, is a statement saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the God of the world. And then it's Anochi Hashem Elokecha. I am your God. You have to understand that I'm the God of the world, but also I'm your God. Take this statement that's out there in the world and realize it for yourself and implement it in yourself and have it impact who you are and how you live your life, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one, Asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim, because I am impacting your life, because everything that's happening to you is because of me. And this is what the Maharal basically explains. This is the foundation of understanding that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the God of the world, and He exists. He's there. This is reality. Anochi Hashem. But then also, Elokecha Asher hotzeticha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am your God, and I impact you, and I influence you. This is how the Maharal explains this idea of Anochi Hashem and how it is a mitzvah. It is a commandment. commandment, even though it doesn't start with a saying of a commandment. However, like I said, this is a very big topic, a very big machloket in the Rishonim. So much more about this. So many books have been written just about this topic. But going back to this idea of taking these 10 dibrot, aseret dibrot, and turning them into 10 commandments, and by that minimizing what there are, is probably one of the bigger misconceptions about the Torah, because the Torah is everything. And just like the Gemara says, when we accepted the mitzvahs, it's not only about doing the mitzvahs, but it's also lilmod, ulelamed, lishmor velasot. We have 4 covenants, 4 britot in each different mitzvah. It's about learning it, it's about teaching it, it's about keeping it, it's about developing it, it's about living it. And this is why we make the bracha every morning, lihitasek b'divrei Torah, like we've said many, many times. The Torah is here because it impacts our entire life, not only here to give us a set of rules to live by. It's not just commandments to follow, a list to tick off things that you do. It's something to live by. It is life. This is why we have the different covenants around them. This is what Torah is about. This is our livelihood. This is why Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim to give us the Torah, to make sure that our nation lives their life by the Torah. But again, not only by only following the Torah, but even more so by living the Torah, by living this connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, by making the Torah, by making HaKadosh Baruch Hu our entire reality, our entire livelihood. This is why these aseret hadibot are not mentioned as aseret mitzvot or aseret tzivuim, 10 commandments, but rather it's the dibot, it's the statements that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into the world, spread over the world to make reality, to sustain reality for us to live by and live our lives filled with Torah and according to Torah.
Yeah, exactly. And this connects to a pasuk in Tehillim that Chazal connect to Anochi and Lo Yelecha. Achat diber Elohim, shtayim zu shamat. And without getting into the details, it's talking about that Hashem said Anochi and Lo Yelecha together, and we heard them as 2. But first of all, just notice the separation. There's what Hashem is speaking, and there's what we're able to listen to pick up. Hashem is speaking, and we're trying to pick up what he's speaking, to take it in. It's exactly what we're describing here. And I think this also answers for me what you were talking about before about the first mitzvah, that some describe it as the mitzvah of emunah. And it always bothered me, if it's the mitzvah of emunah, having belief, of faith, why shouldn't it say, you shall have faith, right? Ta'amin, believe, have faith. It doesn't say that. But based on what we're saying, it doesn't need to say that. Because why is the first mitzvah faith? Because what is faith? It's tuning in. It's listening to the fact that Hashem, who created all the world, is your God, is here for you, cares about you, is the one who took you out of Mitzrayim and is taking you through everything you're taking. Tuning into each one of these dibrot teaches me another thing. Tuning into that diber teaches me faith, brings me to faith. It is faith. I don't need to tell you, have faith. Tuning into that is exactly what faith is all about.
Very good, very good. And just like we were saying, Naseh v'nishma, this is what it means, Naseh v'nishma. We don't only keep the Torah and follow the Torah, but we're also listening. We keep on listening to the dibrot of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the saying of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world, to the reality around us that is not just a simple nature reality, but it's actually the reality that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has put in the world, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is there and is all around us. And there's so much more to add on to this. This is foundations in Chassidus. Whole Sfarim, again, are built and written about these topics, but we'll have to end here because we're out of time. So Shkoyach Yitzi.
Shkoyach Tuvia, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. In the Mitzvah Hashem, we'll talk again next week.